The time now is 4:07. I would like to convene City Council successor agency to the Westminster Redevelopment Agency meeting. This is a special meeting study session, and today is May 24th. Roll call, please.
Councilwoman Van West.
Here.
Councilmember Monzo.
I'm here.
Councilmember Ho.
Here.
Vice Mayor Nguyen.
Here.
And Mayor Nguyen.
I'm here.
Mayor, you have a quorum.
So salute to the flag is Mayor Nguyen today, an invocation by City Attorney. So please stand. Place your hand over your heart and ready, begin. I bless you. To the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Please bow your head. Heavenly Father, we humbly come before you and ask that you would enable us to be able to undertake this business tonight in a fair and thoughtful manner. We ask that you would assist in helping us to make wise decisions for the council and for public, even as we participate in offering suggestions. We commit the evening to you in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen. Thank you to our city attorney for the invocation, and welcome for the first meeting, our Madam Clerk for the special section. Like I mentioned, this is a special section for our budget study. We'll follow with the regular meeting after this. So at this point here, I would like to please read the oral communication instruction into the record, please.
Absolutely, Mayor. This is the time of the meeting that members of the public may address the City Council regarding items on the agenda. Unless otherwise extended by a majority vote of the City Council, comments shall be limited to 3 minutes per speaker. Any person wishing to address the City Council should complete a green speaker slip that is provided at the entrance to the council chambers and submit the card to the City Clerk. When your name is called, please step to the podium at that time and state your name and city of residence for the record. Mayor, we do have one speaker.
Yes, before you call on the speaker, I would like to remind that this is, like I said earlier, this is budget study session, so any communication should be related to the topic, subject matter. So go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor. We'll go ahead and call Terry Raines.
Good afternoon. I don't have specific line item remarks on this budget because I've not had enough time to go through the entire budget document yet, but every member of this council had better have done so and be thoroughly prepared to have a robust discussion with intelligent and thought-provoking questions asked today, unlike years past. Based on budget projections using the status quo budget version for fiscal year 23-24, the general fund will be below targeted emergency reserve levels of $14 million or 17% per the city's fund balance policy by fiscal year 26-27 and completely out of money in fiscal year 27-28. Reserves are exhausted sooner using the supplemental budget version, yet a 5-year chart showing the latter was not provided. I sent emails to Finance Director Aaron Bax with suggestions that would help council better evaluate this budget. One, provide a separate 5-year general fund projection chart on page 5 of the staff report using the supplemental budget as the base for comparison against the 5-year projection based on the status quo budget. And two, provide the fully burdened annual cost and a detailed cost-benefit analysis and justification for each new position requested in the table on pages 6 through 9 in the staff report. Council could then easily evaluate the merits of each newly requested position individually along the lines of a zero-based budgeting approach. The brief descriptions of what each position does is not compelling enough for council to approve all of these positions. Some positions may be critical to providing services and or growing revenue, while others may not be. I am confident each department head could provide relative productivity stats and compelling justification for each new position they are requesting, especially knowing that would increase their odds of approval. It would also be helpful to provide more budget information in executive summary format with narrative in layman's terms. I know for a fact no one on this city council is a finance expert, nor are most members of the public. when presenting the budget for a city in such a serious financial position as Westminster is, a more easy-to-read, comprehensive written presentation is warranted, as is full transparency. Give the council the tools they need to do their job and the public the tools they need to provide oversight. I understand more information is presented during this staff's oral presentation with slides, but that does not give council or the public any time for that additional information to actually sink in enough to foster robust conversation and formulate key questions and/or direction. Given the seriousness of the city's financial situation, staff should do everything in their power to present this information in a way that council and the public can fully grasp the magnitude of it, similar to the presentation in March 2022 about the impacts of Measure SS going away, which was clear, concise, and bold. To most people, numbers are boring, but we cannot afford for this budget session to be boring. And for God's sake, stop texting on your damn cell phones. Pay attention. Our city's survival is on the line here. Council, the city's financial situation and providing efficient quality services to the public should be your top priority. If not, you don't belong in local government. And for the love of God, Charlie, don't interrupt speakers tonight. Thank you.
We have no further speakers, Mayor.
All right, thank you very much. Next topic is fiscal year 2023-2024 proposed budget. So staff.
Great. Thank you, Mayor, members of the City Council. As you know, every year we come out to present a budget as mandated. And so for the first time, we're going to be presenting a one-year budget as opposed to a two-year budget, given the city's financial status. Historically, our city has not had a very strong financial status, and with the loss of the sales tax measure recently, we knew coming into this fiscal year that we would be in a deficit, given the amount of money that the city has lost. And so tonight's presentation is focused on what the next year is going to look like. We're presenting a budget that has essentially two tracks. One is maintaining the current service levels with built-in increases due to inflation. The other side of that also includes positions and services that needed increasing as we saw throughout the year. The second track that we're providing includes a supplemental requests. Traditionally, we look at our staffing levels, we look at services provided, we look at expectations that the community and this council has, as well as staff's expectations to be able to execute and implement those services. And so our supplemental, there's a second budget that incorporates the supplemental requests that staff has included, in which we feel that these would help elevate the city and implement things that this council has expressed over the last fiscal year. So with that, I will turn it over to Aaron and our finance director and our assistant city manager, Adolfo Zeta, who will present the presentation.
Thank you, Christine. Good evening, Council, or Mayor, Vice Mayor, Council. I have a presentation on the 23-24 proposed budget, and then staff will be available to answer any questions. So as Christine said, this is a one-year budget with two versions. The status quo budget version, which includes increases for current services due to inflation and includes the positions that were approved during the current fiscal year. The second version, the supplemental version, includes new positions for consideration totaling $1.8 million. And these were included to meet the expectations of the City Council, the community, and the organization by providing economic development, enhanced city services, including public safety, and attracting and supporting quality development projects within the city. So first of all, I'd like to start with this page that gives you a little understanding of the city's budgeted funds. So the general fund, which is the largest fund in the city with a budget of $80 million, provides or accounts for most services that people associate with a city: public safety, public works, parks and recreation. Special revenue funds have a budget of $8.4 million and account for resources that are for specific purposes and legally restricted, like gas tax and CDBG. Capital project funds have a budget of $10.4 million and account for construction of major improvements funded by grants and transfers. Some examples are streets and park improvements, and Economic Development Fund is also in this category. Enterprise funds have a budget of $19.3 million and are funds that operate like a business. In the city's case, it's the water utility. Fiduciary funds with a budget of $5.9 million are resources held for the benefit of parties outside the city. This is where we account for our successor agency to the Westminster Redevelopment Agency, or otherwise known as SARA. Internal service funds with a budget of $12.5 million account for services provided to other city departments, like vehicle services and building maintenance. So this pie chart shows the same funds that I just discussed, with the total city budget at $136.5 million. As you can see with the teal slice, the general fund is the largest portion of that, 59% or $80 million. The next largest is the water utility at $19.3 million or 14%. Special revenue funds are sources that are legally restricted or otherwise assigned for specific purposes. These funds include park dedication, gas tax, Measure M, CDBG, home, Family Resource Center, AQMD, and special police grants. Total revenues are $15.6 million, and total expenditures are $8.4 million, with $7.5 million in transfers out to capital projects. ARPA funds are also included in this category, but they were previously allocated on October 24th and November 8th of 2022. So they're not in this total budget, but their balances will be carried over at the end of the year. The enterprise funds, or the water utility, is comprised of three funds: water utility, or water conservation, and capital project funds. Revenue is budgeted at $20.8 million, with the majority coming from service charges at $20.7 million. Expenditures are budgeted at $19.3 million. The largest expenditure in this category is pump and basin assessment at $7.2 million. Salaries and benefits are next at $4.5 million. The last water rate increase was in February of '21 and included 5 years of revenue adjustments. Internal service funds are used to account for the financing of goods and services provided by one department to another department in the city and are funded by department charges on a cost reimbursement basis. The city has 5 internal service funds: motor pool, general benefits, liability administration, information systems, and government buildings, with a total budget of $12.5 million. 4 of the 5 funds are below the minimum fund balance policy level, recommended level of $500,000. This is due to increases in supply costs for government buildings, vehicle costs, and legal expenditures, plus in prior years, excess balances were used to relieve shortages in the general fund. $3.1 million is needed to bring these funds to the recommended minimum reserve level. This is a summary of the $11.5 million in capital project recommendations for 23-24. These projects are funded through transfers in from special revenue funds, water funds, and $1.5 million from the general fund. $7.4 million of the infrastructure are for infrastructure street improvements, and $2.5 million in water system improvements are the largest allocations in this category. The Economic Development Fund is also in this category, and this fund has $1.4 million in expenditures, which includes the vehicle rebate program, and the ending balance is $2.5 million. In 2017, the city began setting money aside in 2 Section 115 trust accounts to help pay for pension and retiree medical obligations. As of March 31st, 23, the pension trust account has a balance of $4.5 million, and the retiree medical trust account has a balance of $4.7 million. The city's retiree medical is currently paid for on a pay-as-you-go basis, so we currently have enough in the trust to cover 1 year of costs. These funds in both accounts can only be used to pay for pension and medical costs and could help to offset future budget shortfalls. Future pension cost projections will fluctuate based on CalPERS investment returns. Now we'll get into the general fund. The general fund revenues in both budget versions are budgeted at $74.8 million. Almost 86% of general fund revenues come from taxes. The next largest category is charges for service at 8.1%, or $6.1 million, and investment and rental at 2%. The remaining categories total $2.9 million, or 4%. The general fund is the primary operating fund of the city and accounts for all tax and fee revenues to provide city services. The proposed general fund status quo budget maintains all current service levels with no cuts, but does not include any potential employee negotiated adjustments. The projected status quo budget uses $6.8 million of reserves and includes increases of $5.5 million from the adopted 22-23 budget. This slide lists some of the expenditures that make up that $5.5 million increase. The ambulance contract projected increase is $1.3 million. Employee and retiree salary and benefit increases of $1 million. PERS retirement costs are up $322,000. Part-time minimum wages are up $225,000. Police overtime has been previously under budgeted, so that's $978,000 increase. OCFA 4.5% contracted increase is $607,000. WAG's animal shelter contract 2% increase is $35,000, and it includes new positions previously approved, including the homeless liaison officers and the school resource officers. This slide shows the estimate for the current year, which is the first column, 22-23 estimate. Based on this projection, we will use $2.9 million of reserves and have a ending reserve balance of $35.3 million. The next column, the one that's a little bit darker gray, the 23-24 status quo budget, shows the revenue that I showed earlier of $74.8 million, expenditures of $81.5 million, uses $6.8 million of reserves, and ends with a reserve balance of $28.5 million. In this version, the next four columns are projections out, and in this version, the city is out of money in fiscal year 27-28, and we're below the targeted emergency reserve of 17% in fiscal year 26-27. The general fund expenditures and transfers out are budgeted at $81.5 million. Employee costs make up the largest portion of this budget at 58.7%, or $47.9 million. Contracts and services are next at 25.8%, or $21.1 million. Together, these two categories make up 85% of the budget. This slide shows those same $81.5 million of expenditures by department. Most of the costs are related to public safety. Police at $40.5 million, or almost 50%, and fire at $19.2 million, or 23.5%, are the largest. General government at 8.3%, and public works at 7.6% are the next largest departments. Now we're going to talk about the second budget version, the supplemental budget. This version uses $8.6 million of reserves, adds 17 new positions with 4 position reclasses, and was prepared to meet the expectations of the City Council and the community and the organization by providing economic development, enhanced city services, including public safety, and attracting and supporting quality development projects within the city. This is that same projection that I previously showed using the supplemental budget version. As you can see, the 22-23 estimate is the same, using 2.9 million of reserves. The supplemental version uses 8.6 million of reserves, and then the same four-year projections are shown next. With this scenario, the city is below the targeted emergency reserve of 17% in fiscal year 25-26 and out of funds in fiscal year 26-27. This is 1 year sooner than the status quo budget.
At this point, I'll be walking you through the supplemental positions requests. Again, this adds 17 new positions and 4 position reclasses. We'll start off with the Department of the City Clerk, a records coordinator with the focus on public records requests and mandatory records retention and management. In the Police Department, a dispatch manager to manage multiple employees on varied shifts. Police Traffic Officer, provide support to the Traffic Bureau and increase motor presence in the community. Civilian Investigator, provides investigative support for the Detective Bureau and assist with the backlog of cases. Civilian Crime Prevention Officer, provide additional support for patrol and investigations divisions. Vietnamese-speaking Public Information Specialist, responds to increased demand for transparency and community engagement in predominantly used language. Professional Standards Unit Training Coordinator will manage all training requirements for departmental personnel to ensure compliance. Court Liaison Specialist to facilitate court and legally mandated subpoenas for all department personnel. From the Finance and Human Resources Department, a management analyst, which would be a shared position between the two departments, to provide administrative and professional support for research, analysis, and to facilitate complex projects. In the Public Works Department, add an administrative assistant to provide administrative support in day-to-day operations for the engineering divisions. Add an engineering technician to provide engineering services at City Hall counter, issue permits, and provide project support to engineering staff. Reclass the assistant city engineer position to a city engineer. Manage and support engineering daily activities, oversee all capital improvement program projects, and administer federal, state, and local requirements and programs. Reclass the assistant public works director position to a maintenance and utilities manager to manage the operations and budgets for all maintenance divisions, including the water division. Reclass transportation manager / city traffic engineer position with a senior engineer in traffic. This would identify a lead for day-to-day traffic and transportation functions. Reclass an associate engineer development position to a senior engineer development to administer large commercial and small residential development projects. In community development, senior planner to focus specifically on advanced planning. Planning technician, this would reduce waits at the counter, assist customers with their projects, and plan check ADUs. In the Community Services Department, Community Services Manager, provide support to the entire department and to the director and align the Community Services Department. Management Analyst, provide support to the Community Services Department with special projects, research, staff reports, grant writing reports, contract administration, commissions, committees, and foundations. Community Services and Recreation Coordinator, Senior Center, increase in demand for meals. There's been a 50% increase since compared to pre-pandemic conditions. Services and general participation in programs in the Senior Center. At this point, I'd like to turn the presentation back over to our Finance Director, Erin Back.
Thank you, Adolfo. This slide shows both budget versions' ending reserve balances. The teal line is the status quo budget, and the blue line is the supplemental budget version reserve balance. The gray shaded area is the targeted 17% emergency reserve. In both versions, the general fund is out of money in the next few years. Using the status quo budget, the city is below the targeted emergency reserve of 17% in fiscal year 26-27 and out of money in 27-28. Using the supplemental budget version, the city is below the targeted emergency reserve in 25-26 and out of money in fiscal year 26-27, 1 year sooner than with the status quo budget. This slide is a summary of our transaction use tax revenue by fiscal year. The city started receiving Measure SS funds in fiscal year 16-17 and received 1 quarter. Measure SS ended December 31st of 22. Measure Y began collections on April 1st of 23 and ends March 31st of 2043, so 20 years. 1 quarter of revenue was lost in fiscal year 22-23 between December 31st and April 1st, which amounts to $4 million. The 2% transaction use tax or sales tax is available for Orange County taxing agencies. Currently, Westminster has 1% with Measure Y. OCTA and Measure M2 has 0.5%, which leaves 0.5% available to the first agency to capture these funds. If it's a city or if it's not an agency other than Westminster, these funds would be completely lost to Westminster. In conclusion, staff continues to find ways to increase revenues. There are no substantial short-term revenue fixes to minimize negative spending in the general fund. New revenue sources can take years to implement. Future budgets will continue to use reserves to be balanced until the deficit gap closes or reserves are depleted. Council may provide direction on the proposed status quo budget and supplemental budget options. The final budget is planned to be presented for adoption to the council at the June 28th, 23 meeting. And staff is available for questions.
Okay, thank you very much. I would like to thank staff for a very comprehensive report. I know that there's a lot of effort put into this. So again, thank you for that. I do have a bunch of questions, but I'd like to start out with different district first. But I ask the council to be asked enough questions so that the other members of the council can also ask questions, and then we can go to the second round instead of taking so much time for one person and the other just sit there and listen. So I like to make sure that you ask enough questions and then let the other to follow up on that. So why don't I go ahead and start with Councilmember West for District 1.
Mr. Mayor, can you come back to me in a bit?
Okay, all right. Councilmember Menzo.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, staff, for our presentation. Aaron, Adolfo, Christine, and all the staff for working and putting this together for us. Yeah, I mean, it's hard to say it. It's not pretty. So it's kind of hard. There's always a lot of wants and needs, and when you see something like this, it's very hard to kind of get excited of the future and what we have to look forward to. For a long time, staff a lot of members of the staff in different departments have been wearing multiple hats, and that you just can't sustain that. It's just not. Eventually, something's going to give, and I think a little bit of that is showing, because you can't overwork staff forever. It's just not going to happen. So we need to really need to work hard to try to bring in new revenue, help our city progress. On some of the positions that were mentioned, how many of those are like really, I mean, that we really definitely need to have? I know I would like to have them all, obviously, but, you know, some of those is just, we have to kind of pick and choose at this point. One of the ones that I have a question on is which I don't like the way it's worded here. It says replace transportation manager / city traffic engineer position with senior engineer traffic. So we're not going to have a traffic manager with this position being replaced?
So, yeah, so I can add to that. So what's happening is, essentially, in an ideal situation, we need to have a transportation manager, but what's happened right now is, unfortunately, with our assistant city manager being the assistant city manager, he's no longer filling that particular seat, but he's still carrying out responsibilities, and so day-to-day operations of transportation are being handled, through the Public Works Department, and so Adolfo will step in on like the high-level decisions, the final decisions, because he is our assigned transportation, expert or manager, if you will. And so ideally, we would have both, but obviously that's a cost. And right now, just to streamline, day-to-day operations and identifying someone who is there in Public Works in the Transportation Division every day to do those day-to-day functions, it's best to identify a lead in that division. Here we have the understanding that, of course, Adolfo would be making those final decisions as the utmost expert in our city for transportation.
But if that stays and nobody's really filling that position, what's the benefit?
If nobody
yeah.
fills which position?
The manager position, because,
Like if we kept it on the books?
yeah, I've kept it on the books.
So if you keep it on the books, we would still have, if you wanted to add the senior engineer for traffic, but also keep the transportation manager on the books, we still are obligated to increase our budget for both of those positions. So it is an increased cost, but it would just be vacant. But it's still an allocation that we would need to make, which is in turn increasing our total cost.
I get that, but I think once you remove it, then you had to try to get it back. So I don't think if you're not going to fill it, it's going to be vacant. What's the point of removing it?
So you'd have essentially the salary savings, but you just know that you would always have that position that needs to be budgeted for, even if it is vacant. Yes, there would be salary savings. And you're right, once a position is eliminated off of the job classifications, it's always harder to try to add it back on and justify why it needs to go back on. We're open to it, but again, it would be an increase in cost.
We could underfill the one position.
We
And
could.
just leave the manager and underfill it with the senior.
Yeah, I think that's.
And then it would have savings. We'd need to budget the position as approved, which would be the manager position, but we could have, the savings is approximately $14,000 that we would save.
Okay.
Well, we'd have in savings, but we'd need to budget the full amount.
Yeah, I like that version better. The other one, I think, one of the ones I did like that I saw on this list is for the civilian crime prevention officer. I like that. I know that's something that we really need help in. I don't see an expert on that one here. One of those things I've spoken to our chief about is just education on the property managers and property owners, commercial property owners, and making them aware of their property rights when it comes to loitering and camping, folks camping on their property. I think that's really something that we really need to do, is have position. And I've spoken to the chief about this in the past, what we can do. I know other cities have crime prevention officers out there, and I think it really helps in that realm of, property rights for home owners. As far as chief, can you elaborate on the crime prevention officers' duties, as far as one of the things that we spoke about is notifying property owners of their rights. And that's something that we desperately need.
Yes, Councilman. Good afternoon, Mayor, Vice Mayor, council members. Yes, we're asking for that. For the size of a city we are, we do not have one. Most cities, even smaller than us, have a crime prevention expert on their staff. And that crime prevention is trying to get ahead of the game. Instead of us just, like we're doing now, responding to crimes as they're happening or after they occurred, this person goes out to private homes, private businesses, groups, and educates them on what they can do to make themselves safe, educates them on how to report crimes. In the example you gave, they would contact places that were having, in the example you gave, homeless issues, and would get letters of authorization so our police officers can enforce laws there and maybe help them with some of their issues. Right now, we do some of that, but when, in the example I gave, it would pull an HLO who's already overtasked out of the field, and now they're doing crime prevention specialist work and not in the field dealing with the homeless like they should be. So that position we feel is, we didn't ask for everything the police department necessarily needs. We just asked for the ones that we think we can get the most effort from in match our activity levels and free up some of our officers to do. And that was one of the positions we identified.
Good, thank you. The other question I had is on under the police department revenues. I didn't see the firing range. Is there a revenue source from the firing range? I believe we should have some on there, right?
There is. I think it's listed at approximately $175,000.
Okay.
That's what we're looking at coming in at. So we actually do have, we're in the black on that, which is nice.
Okay.
That said, we do have an aging range, and many pieces of equipment do need to be replaced. We also had the roof during the heavy rains cave in one of the training rooms, which is going to be quite expensive to repair. So it's a good thing we have some money left, or we're in the black on that, so we can make those repairs.
Okay, thank you. And then the other question is about, I know that we pay for maintenance, and then I also, not too long ago, noticed that we had a cost for repair for the Rose Center to repair some boilers, I think it was. Is there, how much, is there a revenue that comes out of that Rose Center?
The Rose Center does bring in some revenue. The catering side brings in about $12,000 a month,
Okay.
but the theater side does not.
And for what reasoning is that theater side doesn't bring in revenue?
I believe that's part of the contract.
So when the contract was negotiated, it's probably been about 4 years or so, 4 or 5 years ago. There were just parameters that were built in where we subsidize a lot of the repairs for that side of the building. The performances that are held over at the Rose Center are minimal, and we just don't make any money out of it.
So the cost for maintenance and repair, I think, we're upside down on that,
Yes.
Erin?
Or she will look it up.
The budget for the Rose Center is $165,000 in expenditures, so we bring in, I just added that up. Yeah, we're upside down a little bit, about $144,000 to the $165, plus any improvement, so yes.
When is that contract up for renegotiation?
I believe, so for the catering side, it's expiring in the next few months, month or so. So we would be coming to you soon with a consideration of what to do with that. The Rose Center theater side, I believe, expires next year.
Okay. All right. I have more questions, but I'll let the next council member.
Thank you very much for your consideration. I would like to go back to District 1, if you're ready.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. So regarding the Rose Garden, I know that I talked to the city manager a lot and as well as Adolfo regarding ways that we can generate money. I mean, that theater is a beautiful theater and I feel like it's not being used to its full capacity. And I think it is important for us to find ways, are there ways that we can promote it, to have people rent the space for the theater to generate money for us? Or is it because in the contract, it wouldn't allow us to do that?
I could generally address it, that it's always been something where when the contract is up, the council could negotiate an agreement for whatever terms you can find somebody to utilize it. That's really council discretion. A particular group came forward and the council agreed to grant them the rights to use it based on certain terms. So yes, when the agreement is up, the council could put it out for RFP. You could evaluate another group or talk to the same group and work out whatever terms you think is best.
So just to add to that, when the agreement for Jay's Catering, it's about for 2017, sounds about right. When that agreement came about, they were, part of the parameters of the RFP included their ability to be able to attract and to attract and book clients to use that, that side of the theater. So it's really within the purview of their contract to do advertisement, et cetera, to book the center. Same for the theater side, the theater management side, it's the exact same thing. They manage their own productions, they advertise on their own, so you'll see on their social media, you'll see their advertisements. We include their advertisements in our rec guide and email blasts that, that we put out. But because they are both under contract, we have limitations to promoting what they are essentially doing. They, in terms of, when we sign an agreement with them, they are responsible for the advertisement and use of those facilities, including advertising for their shows or their events or booking, et cetera. So there is a plan moving forward with what we want to do with these, and because they're both under contract right now, we're not at liberty to really discuss it, but traditionally, when contracts are up, we would be issuing an RFP. Times have changed due to COVID, so that may be the case, but this council will, you will have the opportunity when an RFP is issued, based on what proposals we get, for you guys to make a well thought out decision for the use of those facilities.
Okay, now, within the agreement, are they allowing, are we making any money through the theater side at all? Vanessa or Aaron?
I don't believe that the theater pays anything. I know that the catering side does pay monthly revenue, which has a flat amount plus any, above a certain amount, they do pay an additional percentage of their income, but I don't think the theater side does.
Okay, and within the agreement, if they are not generating any money, are there a way that we can, not follow through with the agreement or cancel the agreement because they didn't follow through on their end? Are there any of that in the agreement?
So without having the agreement in front of me, without any parameters that say they were supposed to reach a certain, threshold, any kind of change would have required a contract amendment, which this council would have needed to approve those parameters. And just historically sitting in some of those discussions once upon a time about the health of the Rose Center Theater Foundation, it is a nonprofit foundation, and generally the requirements for them to operate are not as profitable.
And if I could add, I think when it was originally built, there was concept that you would make money on the catering side, but that the theater would probably not make as much. The council can change that, though. If you think that there's a way to make it profitable, when this agreement is up, you could determine that there's a better arrangement. In fact, if both agreements are up, you could have one company handle the whole thing. So there's a lot of freedom there, but right now we have existing contracts. My suggestion would be, the catering's very close to ending, so that's a good time to talk about that, and to start thinking about the theater if you're going to want to make a change, because that will end next year.
Right, and I understand that a lot of people in the community would love to use the Rose Garden for the Vimmy's event and whatnot, and concerts, but I feel like they can't really use it, and there's some kind of stipulation, and so it's just feel like, why are we as a city stuck with this, when we can generate money, when that beautiful theater can generate a lot of money for the city as well? It's a win-win situation, but I cannot wait when we revisit that agreement. But I wonder, in the meantime, are there a way that we can amend the agreement before the year end?
We'll have to spend some time to look at the agreements. Like I said, one is set to expire soon. And, we've, staff behind the scenes is evaluating at different options, options that include, again, going out to RFP or potentially taking it over as a city. There are theaters out there in which the city runs it, one being like City of Cerritos, for example.
Right.
City of La Mirada. And there are cities that operate that way, but again, we will, when that time comes and we'll make there's a decision point, we will move forward with what that looks like. But we are looking at options right now. Obviously, I have to wait for the contract to near its termination.
That's great. And I love reading the budget. I just love that Measure Y is giving us an extra 16 million into the general fund. So thank you, guys.
Thank you very much. District 3, Councilmember Hall.
Yes. Okay, first I just want to say, I would love to fill all the positions that you have proposed, and as I understand there are needs to fill those positions, undoubtedly. But I do feel that we need to wait because our finances are so unstable right now. We just started picking up the Measure Y money, the 1%. We did lose $4 million, and we all know why. So unfortunately, we had to lose $4 million. We didn't have to, but that's regrettably, if you look at our finances, we could have used that money. I know that you listed some costs, and these costs, the following costs, and I probably don't have a complete list, but these are, and we have to give priority to these costs that are inevitable because, as per contracts, I'm sure. I believe I'm just getting this from what you, from your slideshow earlier. So number one is OCFA contracts, right? Right?
I can go back to that slide if you'd like.
Well, what I wanted to say was I know that OCFA was negotiating on the contract, but I didn't know, is this the reason? Is this the end result of that
The contract has
negotiation?
a cap at 4.5% annually, and the proposed budget is that 4.5% cap. So that's the maximum that it can increase, and that's what they've given us as their estimate for the year.
Got it. So that we can't do anything about. So we're stuck with that. And that's why I'm saying is that I know these are the costs that must incur and that we must have, shall I say, we must pay. No way around that. And then there's a WMEA pay increase, right? And we know that, correct?
That's the total employees, so that includes the contracts, that includes standard increases that are not part of the negotiated contract, that includes retiree costs. So that category, or that total that I gave you of 1 million includes all of those things.
Okay, and no way around that, right?
No.
Okay, and then there's minimum wage increase.
Correct.
That, there's nothing you can do about that. And of course, that leads to an increase, and we saw the increase or the proposal on with the cost of doing business, such as WAGs. So, money has to come from somewhere to cover things like that we have nothing to do. We have no control over, correct? So I think that we are dealing with so many, moving parts, with so many obligations, financial obligations. So our obligations go to contractual obligations, to keeping ourselves afloat with what we already have committed. The one thing that I was just looking at, and I noticed you mentioned, which is OT for our PD department, and I know that's like under, I think I heard you say that that's kind of under budgeted, and it's roughly $1 million. Is that correct?
That's correct. In the past, we've used salary savings to offset that overtime amount. But it's been consistently that amount. So we have in the proposed budget to increase the budget to cover the cost of overtime in the police department.
Is there a, maybe our chief could answer, is there a reason for running the department with so much OT? Is there a way to minimize that, to compromise, to mitigate?
Yes, so with state and federal laws regarding wages and hours worked, you will always have overtime in most organizations. The amount of overtime can vary. One of the ways to limit the overtime is if we have enough staffing. So until we have enough staffing, we have to fill the voids with officers on overtime. Some overtime is outside of those needs, though. For example, if an officer is called into court on his or her day off, we'd have to pay them overtime. If they have to go to mandatory training that was set by the state, we'd have to pay them overtime. If they're on a call for service, we have a shooting or a stabbing or something like that, fatal traffic accident like a few days ago, and it goes over the hours that officer is supposed to be there, it's mandatory overtime. So we don't have control over a lot of it, but the majority of our overtime, we actually track it. We have pie charts. We have other graphs. We actually track it very closely and can tell you where the majority of overtime is during that pay period. And for the most part, it is actually covering, so meaning we're short-staffed.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. That really signals that you are short-staffed. And because I can't imagine that going to court and going to all those, like anytime you're called upon to show up, subpoenas, et cetera, it would not add up to that much money. But this really signals significant short staff, and you can't really offset it with, or you're just not showing that you're offsetting it with other accounts. For instance, I know we set aside to hire more, and since we haven't hired, could you use that money to offset?
So we do. The finance director actually mentioned salary savings. In the past, we would take the money from there.
Are we still able to do that is what I'm asking?
We are. However, there's not as much salary savings because we are filling some of the vacancies. And even when we fill all the vacancies, we will probably be spending all of the overtime because when I say all the vacancies, the police department is not the size it once was before this city started experiencing all the financial problems which we have today. It's never been corrected. Because of that, we have not hit those numbers. At the time, I believe the police department was 115 sworn. Right now is significantly smaller than that, even if we have every position filled. It's not in our position allocation plan. It's nothing that the council has approved for us to go back to those numbers. So because of that, the officers that are here pick up the slack, and by doing that, they have to work extra hours, and that's overtime.
Yeah, just to add to that, the city's had a history of using salary savings to offset true, costs and needs for personnel. That's never a good habit to,
Right.
For any budget is to rely on those salary savings. That's where you get into trouble where if you're trying to build the workforce and now, now your funds they're not being allocated to what they need to be. But, so the reality is, we are trying not to have salary savings account for, being able to fund other positions.
Correct.
Yes, and City Manager, if I can make one more comment on that too. From a morale and retention standpoint, and retention equates to a huge expense for the city. When we have to replace people, it's a very expensive endeavor. It creates what we call mandates, which is mandatory overtime. And the number one reason in a survey, a informal survey that I've done is for people leaving the department, it's in the top 3, was mandates. A lot of people go, oh boy, they make a lot of money on overtime. They make time and a half. They don't want it. Keep it. They don't want to work it. They want time with their family. They want a work-life balance.
I understand.
And so fixing that and getting more staff, even if it's just the ones filling the open positions, which is what we're doing, that helped. And our retention, knock on wood, our retention rate in the last 12 months has been 100%. And that's unheard of right now at a police department.
Thank you for giving me that big picture, really. Today, we're looking at the financial end of it, but of course, my concern has always been retention and also hiring, and to know that you're able to fill those positions, that's really, it's very enlightening to know that people are applying, and I guess that is partially, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think it's the stability, our financial stability has a lot to do with it since the, passing of the Measure Y, correct? So that's really the upside of things. So we're not saying to have those, it's good to have that big picture, but unfortunately, today we're just talking about the finances and the financial aspect of it, and I'm just looking at the OT, and so with your explanation, it gives me a fuller picture of your department, and I thank you for that. So, but here's the thing: we're only starting to collect that Measure Y money. I think we're just not even at we're at the very first quarter, right, of Measure Y, and I think we need like a full, at least the rest of the year, or, one fiscal year. So that will be from July to July. Our fiscal year starts and ends in July, right? Correct?
Correct,
Yeah.
July 1st.
So I think it would be nice to get that money in before we start spending. And, but I think that this council, and maybe minus the new people on the council, we've always been aware that I think we would be in the red, at the 4th year, like 4 years from now, 3 to 4 years from now, and that's why there was that proposal of capturing 1.5 cent tax instead of 1, but we won't go into that. So I just have a question for you. Which is on page 7, I'm just wondering, in lieu of VLF, what's that acronym? What does that stand for?
Oh, vehicle license fees. So the city used to get money from vehicle license fees, and now we get property tax instead.
Okay. I see. And then at the bottom of that page, it says unassigned fund balance, unassigned. That's can you explain a little more about that? That's a huge number. That's unassigned. I was just curious, what is that made of?
The unassigned is the available to spend, or is available to use. So we show
Unrestricted?
Correct. The emergency reserve is the top line. That's the 17%. That's what we don't want to go down below. But with the status quo budget, you could see that goes from 22 million down to 14 million. With the supplemental version, it goes down to 12.5 million.
I see. Okay, got it. Thank you for that. I just have just one more question. On page 36. So we know that I thought the WRA funding is over. I thought that was successor agency and WRA money we are no longer getting anything from that. And could you tell me your proposed $5.8 million, $5.9 million?
We still pay the debt service. So last year, the last and final ROPS was approved by the council and submitted to the state, and it was approved. So annually, the county allocates revenue or property tax to the city to pay that debt service. There isn't anything we can do with it. The money comes in and pays the debt service, and that's it.
I see. Okay. I'm good for now, Mayor. I'm good for now.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Vice Mayor is not here, so I'm going to take over, and then when he come back, we'll give it to him. Before I go on, let me ask staff. I know that council have a lot of questions here, and it is, it's all excellent and valid questions. How many study sessions that we are talking about here? I know this is the first one. I know different agencies have like 2 or 3 budget sessions before they conclude it. And what about here?
You can have as many as you'd like. We just need to have an adopted, budget by the end of June. But if the council decides that you're not ready to adopt a budget, we can go into we can extend and adopt a resolution.
Okay.
But yes.
So I want to let you know that we still have time to discuss about it. So
Yes.
we'll go for the second round. Why don't we go ahead and start with the Vice Mayor?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I am very curious about the 0.5% tax increase that you guys propose, or just put on the report. So just let's assume that if we have that 0.5%, how is it going to help in this situation, and how long is it going to help us until we run out the money again?
If the city were to get the additional half-cent on the transaction use tax, it would be approximately $8 million. So basically, it would make the city
Is this like annually or?
annually, yes.
Annually?
So it would balance the budget, and then any additional revenue would be above that.
And how long are we going to sustain until we run out of the business?
Well, costs increase annually, but revenue does have projections. We build in about 3% projection on sales tax revenue annually, so that source would go up as well, unless, of course, there's a recession or something like that, then it wouldn't. But $8 million, it does bring us whole for the near future on those projections. We would still need additional revenue sources, honestly.
Yeah, if you're asking for, so the sales tax was only meant to help us keep the lights on, because we've been struggling to maintain our day-to-day operations and our day-to-day services, right? The whole goal is, as we try to increase our economic development, bring in more businesses that will contribute more to our revenue sources, sales tax, et cetera, that we'd be able to close that gap. Coming in with the 1% last year, we knew we were automatically going to be negative losing that first quarter, but that it was never going to make us whole because of inflation. So if for whatever reason we decide that we're going to capture that additional half-cent tax, that, based on projections that we provided last year, would give us, would obviously give us additional funds, but as we're doing that, it gives us an opportunity or fighting chance to, to create those those revenue-generating sources, economic development, bringing in, different retailers, bringing in, more businesses to fill the vacancies and the, vacant properties within our city, et cetera. So it would actually put us in a better position. We would actually start off not negative as we are right now.
Okay, because as far as I think, this is the last option that we have, right?
For that large amount
Right.
of money.
So if we are not we are not in a better position again, like this, and we don't have any other option. We don't have any tax to raise. So
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, yes, so that 0.5 that's still left on the table, it's right now on the table for, for any applicable agency to, or qualifying agency to capture that funds. If that goes away, we are completely done with options on generating or, based on an additional sales tax revenue. So that option is completely gone. Once somebody else comes and takes it, could be OCTA, could be, could be the county, could be whatever, a bond somewhere, we would lose it.
Yeah,
We
if I
would
could, if I could clarify that, when it comes to transaction and use tax, there's a state limit of 2%. And that's available to the city or other agencies that might take it first. So in this case, the County of Orange has taken a half cent. And then the city has it has a full cent that they've taken. So now that's 1.5. So that's where the remaining 1/2 is. It has not yet been taken. There are possibilities of going about that, but it requires going to the legislature and getting them to increase that amount. But as a general rule, it's maxed out at 2%. So right now, there is a potential for an additional half cent.
All right, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm done.
All right, thank you very much. Let me start out with the last slide that you have, the conclusion. I'm concerned with the second bullet there. There are
Sorry, just a second. Okay.
There are no substantial short-term revenue fixes to minimize negative spending in general fund. We know that we go into negative spending. And can you go to the slide, I don't know, probably second slide, saying that with $8.6 million shortage?
This one?
That's
Oh,
a
yes.
supplemental.
Yes.
Did you want-
And we know that we are spreading it out a number of years. And this is, I understand this is a projection, but at the same time, we are talking about increasing 17 positions.
This 8.6 includes the 17 positions. The 6.8 number
That's
was
right.
without them,
That's right.
correct?
My question is, for the 17 position that we planning to add to the staff here, is it a must that we have to go with that negative $8.6 million to fulfill the 17 position now?
Well, that's the council's decision.
Okay,
The-
then I'm going back to staff and ask, if we need to fill up, like I said, if there's a need to fill up right now, there's no way that we can avoid, then I can live with the 8.6 million deficit. But if it's not, why can't we stagger it out or spread it out so that we don't lump into this $8.6 million? I don't know if it makes sense, if it makes sense to you.
That makes perfect sense. So the reality, so the reason we put two very hard projections, one based on status quo and one based on all the supplementals, you're absolutely right. We could have picked and chose certain positions for certain departments, but we wanted to give just kind of a general overview. So based on the last year and a half or so of the things that we're trying to do as a council and as a city, and really doing a deep dive into the departments and their functions and the roles that certain divisions are lacking, and that we clearly need. We came up, so the departments presented to myself and Aaron Adolfo what those supplemental positions would look like. It's really council's discretion. If you don't have to approve any of the supplementals, because given the financial state that we're in right now, it would be understandable to not approve any of the supplementals. But we wanted to be able to give you an overview of what some of those positions look like that are needed. Like we understand planning and building, for example, with the increase, with the state hammering down on different types of developments that we have to, push through ADUs for the last few years. And over time, we've talked about, the costs of consultants, et cetera, and not having accountability. Those were positions that we included in there, just as an example, right? We have community services, for example. We've been vacant, we've had a vacant key position in there for a while. And then in looking at some of the things that we've been doing in the last year in community services, we're lacking a certain level, to do certain duties and responsibilities, right? So that's why the supplementals are presented as a giant cluster, as opposed to, us choosing and deciding which would be more important. Because at the end of the day, we are operating with a lot less than we were 10 plus years ago when we had layoffs, right? And yet here we are trying to increase the level of services that we have, do better, streamline processes, basically changing the way we operate as an organization, where we're not just trying to be reactive to the things that are being presented to us, to you, that you present to us, et cetera, but we're trying to get in front of the issue so that we're not wasting time and money and resources trying to fix a problem and plug a hole. We just want to build it the right way so that it's not sinking the minute that we're pushing the ship out into the water. So that's why it's being presented the way that it is. But absolutely, we understand there's a deficit. We understand that we are trying to, survive based on the amount of money that we have and what we have in reserves. At the same time, too, and you'll see that in a regular meeting, tonight, we are trying to bring out more opportunities to generate revenue, whether it's us connecting with developers, whether it's us, trying to look at our contracts and making sure that we are getting the best bang for our buck on those service contracts that we have, investing in full-time staff, instead of hiring, a consultant who will then jack their price up, a few years down the line or every year, right? So these are all factors that we consider. The supplementals are truly an investment in our service. And I understand it's a substantial amount of money, but we are trying to catch up. We are trying to push our services forward so that we can generate more money based on how well we present our services to the community and the public.
I agree with you that we do need to invest. However, that at this point here, we need to identify the critical position that we need to fill in order to, fulfill the services that we need to serve the community, as well as, the critical that we must have to have in order to reduce the dollar amount that we go into deficit. And with that, I also want to ask if we were to pass the 0.5% sales tax, can anyone give us approximately how much that is going to be per year?
An additional half cent would be 8 million per year, approximately.
Half of that.
Okay.
Yeah.
So if we pass that, then we'll take care of the deficit. Okay, good. Now, we are talking about, with the $8.6 million of deficit that we were talking about, we have not taken into consideration of the money that we probably generate in near future, which is for the billboard, which is the item that we're talking tonight. And others item like, I don't know whether we can, it's in time for Westminster Mall, but let's say for billboard project first.
Sure. So it does not incorporate any of the revenues that we would be looking at with the billboards. So we'll talk a little bit more about that tonight. It does not incorporate revenues that would be generated from the Westminster Mall. That's correct. It doesn't account for, Bolsa Row when they start opening and making money. So there are projects that are looming out there in the city that is not accounted for in this budget.
Okay. There's another question that I know that from the press releases from the county, Orange County, also from announcement and so on and so on. They were talking about the $250,000 from the WP, the OCWD, that's going to save the Westminster for the water Do you know anything about it? $250,000 saving for the Westminster City.
With mayors, vice mayor, and council members, that is the amount, the saving that the Orange County Water District allowed the city to pump from the basins. And that saved the money that we, instead of paying to importing the water, we pump in the basin and we're paying less. So that's a saving that we have
Okay.
into the
So
water district fund.
I know it's not much, $250,000, but I mean $250,000.
1,000.
Not much, but did you take that into consideration of
That is in the
Budgeting.
budget, but it's in the water fund, so it's not included in the general fund.
It's in the water fund.
Okay.
I think another thing on that too is that can change depending on how much they allow us to pump. So right now, water's good, and I think there's other reasons, like other cities are not pumping as much, maybe. So right now, given though how much they let us do, it's cheaper for us to pump it than it is to buy it from Metropolitan.
Correct.
But that could change.
But that could change next year, because they will set, the threshold from 75 to 85%. Now, they allow it to pump this year 100%, but they can go down to 85 or 75 next year.
Okay, can you go back to the second slide?
The showing the projection,
Yeah, I guess slide number 12.
12.
Okay, wax animal shelter contract, 2% increase, which is $35K, right?
That's correct.
That's what I'm reading here.
Correct.
From what we have on the agenda tonight,
That's in addition to this,
this is addition to this, so we are
right?
talking
That's not
about,
in the WAGs item?
then why didn't you include it in here? Because if it's 8% more, which is 46,000 plus, then we're talking about 75,000 here. I don't understand.
Oh, the item that's being presented for tonight, okay.
No,
It's-
according to her, this is not, the other one is extra, which is, will be added to the 35K.
20, 30, we have an increase of 40,000 built into the budget. Okay.
So Mayor, I understand why this is confusing. So this is part of the budget that was a pre-existing agreement and contract with WAGs for 2% increases per year for operational expenses. We all know inflation hit, materials went up, so we had to renegotiate with them. So they're still getting the 2%, but we did negotiate a one-time 6% increase that will be coming before you tonight. That is a separate item than this.
So this 2% plus 6% total of 8% that you're talking about?
That is correct, Mayor.
Okay, got it. Okay, just I keep the same thing as you guys. I just want to keep it short and then go back later on. Why don't I go back to Councilmember West for second round?
Thank you. You know, I understand that what Mr. Vice Mayor said earlier, that, with the taxation of an extra 0.5% increase, and if we run out of that tax, where would we get the funding into our city? And I know we've been wanting to incentivize businesses into our city and investor as well. I know that's more of a long-term haul of generating that money, but I understand that looking at all the new hire position that we will be taking on, I don't see where we are hiring economic planner to help move our city forward. Do we have it in here? Because I didn't see under city clerk or city manager or what
Economic
I'm missing.
Development Manager already exists in our job classification. So as we had mentioned in a side meeting, we're looking at doing, so we have not been able to hire full-time an Economic Development Manager. It's been flown out several times. And unfortunately, the candidates do not fit the needs of the city and the organization, nor do they have the skill set and experience that we require. And so the alternative at this point is hiring a consultant or consultants that have that background in economic development to do those functions until we ultimately hire a full-time economic development manager.
You know, I think it'll be great for, I know Vice Mayor and myself have been talking about wanting to generate more money into the city. We would love to sit down with the consultant and see what their plan is, because we have other ideas. We want to balance it with them as well to coordinate that. I think that'll be great if we can have that.
We can chat. I would obviously be sitting in those conversations, but really economic development and that drive is a council decision. It's not one or two, your individual council members, but you all as a council need to provide that vision. So that may be something that we, present at a council meeting where.
Maybe a closed session?
Study session.
Yes,
It would be a study
that'd be great.
session.
Yes, I think that would be great. If
It
we
would
can
be
have a study session for that, economic development.
Sure.
And then also, what I recommend as well, if we can motion tonight after the meeting here, is to do another study session for the theater and the catering center, which is the catering, is up soon in 2 months that you mentioned. So we can have a study session on that, so we can, give direction to staff on, what not to move forward with this. And I think it's great for the council to put input on this as well, because we want to generate money for the city.
So we'll circle back on that. So because of the fact that we can talk about what your vision would be for that, but I think the appropriateness of that would be a study session. We just have to be a little careful because of the contract that still exists right now about what the direction is. But we can certainly have a conversation about that in the future in terms of what this council wants to evaluate in terms of that, the direction of both those facilities. Absolutely.
Right. Is it a possibility that we can have that study session, those two, a study session within the next meeting in June?
Well, I think the city manager already clarified that we cannot do that right now. It's during the contract is still in place. Because when we do the study section, just like this one, we have to do it open session.
Yeah.
And it may, it may affect the decision that we want to do. I don't know whether it's right or not.
I appreciate that. Yes, it would just be a bit complicated to have that conversation right now, only because our main focus really needs to be on this current budget that we are about to adopt. Because again, one contract isn't expired until, next year. The other one's expiring in the next few months. And staff really needs to do a deep dive before we let you know and let you have the input on what you'd like to do. Because, we can sit here and throw out ideas on, what we'd like to see, but we want to make sure that we're presenting you stuff in advance so that we're not coming back and forth in multiple study sessions on, let's combine the two together, or let's do some research on other cities. We already know we need to do that research, so let us do that research first so we can present to you, and then you can talk about things that we present, or just completely give us new ideas that are not even what we're thinking about.
Right. So, City Attorney, so is it correct that we cannot do this session for the catering until after the contract? Is that correct?
Well, Amy, I hear what the city manager is saying, and that we've got to focus on the budget right now. That is the most important thing, especially given the timing. But generally speaking, these are contracts that are set, and we have to abide by the terms of those contracts. But we can certainly talk about what's going to happen, to plan for, okay, this contract's about to expire. So we could have that discussion whenever is the most appropriate time. That could be next meeting, but I think the idea is that maybe that's a little too soon. But, we could do that in 2 meetings, we could do that in 3 meetings, but a discussion about what happens when this thing expires. What do you want staff to do? Do you want them to wait until the catering, or when the theater comes up and then do them both together? Do you want them to proceed with bidding out the theater and focus on a particular type of theater group maybe? Or maybe to do a study and come back and report on what other cities have done so that the council can give direction to staff on how they want to bid it out. So yes, that kind of discussion could happen at any time. I think the city manager's concern is that we really need to focus on the budget. That would be what I'm hearing. So that's my answer.
Right, and then I think with the economic plan, we really need to hone that down. I don't know what your suggestion would be as the city manager, but I think it's important for the council to have a study session as well with the intern or the part-time economic person that you have right now contracting. I think it's very important.
What?
Is that a question?
Councilwoman Van West, can we wait
Yes.
for, until we finish the discussion about the budget, and then we're going to visit your
Absolutely,
idea.
go ahead.
Okay.
So it's
next.
basically I'm asking a question, if it's okay to do that, to have the council meet with the economic planner part-time.
So it's not always appropriate for the council members to be in those types of meetings. That is essentially my job. And that's why I said a study session would be great, because you as a council ultimately drive that economic development vision. So whether it's us adopting an economic development strategic plan that's very, specific, or, looking at what our current strategic plan, general strategic plan is, and driving those things through, or these one-on-one conversations that we have, within our meetings, my weeklies with you guys, you provide that direction on what you'd like to see in economic development. And it's my job to work with the consultants, and provide that direction. And if you wanted a seat at the table to provide that direction to the consultants, a study session is the most appropriate, but definitely not a one-on-one time or two-on-one time.
That's what I suggested, a study session.
Which a study session is
Yeah.
perfect, yes.
And then also, would you mind putting out another hiring for a full-time economic plan? Is that another?
So,
plan
so
to be
so we had done it twice. One of the biggest challenges for a higher level position like that, especially when we want someone that is, that is qualified, knowledgeable, has experience, et cetera, preferably from another agency that's similar to ours with the same challenges. One of the biggest challenges that we've had has been our financial status. Someone from another agency is not necessarily going to want to come to our city given the financial status. But the second part of that too is just the, the climate of our, of the, the community and what some of the challenges are, right? So we can put it out. The plan was to put something out after the adoption of this budget so that we know where we stand and that the candidate will know where, where we stand. But in the interim, in order to get the process rolling for these economic development priorities that we've had for, day one, that some of those responsibilities can be carried out, even if it's not a full-time, on the books person, it's a consultant. But they'll be able to at least do the functions that we need.
Are you done?
Yeah,
Oh,
thank you,
okay.
Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Councilmember Menzo?
Thank you, Mayor. I know there's a lot of talk about that .5, and, wish we would have adopted that. Can you really explain for council really understand the risks? I mean, I know you spoke about it, that any agency can come and take that, right? And can you talk about, even for us, the time, like the time limit? Because that obviously has to, or maybe the council doesn't know that it's got to be before the voters. The council doesn't raise taxes, the voters are the ones that have to vote for it. So when the time limit, as far as when would be would it be at the next primary election? Or when would that, I know we can always hold a special election, but that's not quite feasible. That's not feasible. I mean,
Generally,
for us.
with taxes, they're going to be at the general election. There's exceptions when you're in a fiscal emergency and you adopt a resolution. You could potentially bring it at a primary. That would be an alternative. But as a general rule, it's going to be at a general election. And then depending on what kind of tax it is, if it's a general tax or a special tax, there's a different vote threshold. But it's something that is there and available, but if someone else takes it, then it becomes unavailable to us.
My concern is that make sure we understand, and also the staff stays on top of it and warns he could, us, council, bring it to us, you know, in a timely fashion, hey, you know, because we can choose to vote to place it on a ballot measure before, right? Like ahead of time, like we can anytime, and then vote to place it on the ballot on, you know, X day, X election. And if we do that before another agency is that beating them to it? If we make that?
Yeah, I'd have to research that one, but, you know, that's, if you're saying if two agencies put it on at the same time.
Yeah, no, what I'm saying is we have, if this council votes, you know, ahead of the other one to put it on there, then they can't,
Yeah,
can they
once
still-
it's adopted, it's in place.
Yeah.
It's been approved by the voters, and
No, can the council, well, maybe I'm not explaining it right.
I
Can the
get-
council
I get what you're-
choose-
yeah.
Can we, at any time of this year, be it a month from now, 2 months from now, 3 months from now, can we put it on the agenda and council vote on it to place it on the next election at any time? Can we not?
yes, that's true.
Yeah. So that's what I'm getting at, that we need to be, you know, keep that in our mind, that it is, basically, it is technically a race, because somebody's going to take it. Maybe somebody else, and maybe us. But the bottom line is that our residents will still be paying for it. It just depends on where is it going to go.
That's correct.
Is it going to go here for our city and our residents, or is it going to go to the county, or is it going to go to OCTA Caltrans? Just, that's what we need to understand. The other question I had is, I know I've spoken to staff about this, is our parking fees. And are they, I think what they are right now, I don't know if it's even, or even covering operational costs on the parking fees. When are we going to bring that up to date?
We will be bringing that back to you with the fee study.
Okay.
So that will be taken into account. And you're right, they've been frozen at that rate for quite some time. We are the cheapest game in town when it comes to parking near a courthouse, right?
Is that price on the sign the correct price? I noticed out there it says $4 a day.
It is, we are the best game in the county when it comes to parking,
So what is-
particularly next to
It doesn't
a
seem,
county
it seems like a
courthouse.
typo out there or something.
Yeah.
The other thing I want to say is, so I think for the next one, I think, yes, for my wish list would be for us to add all these new positions, as the mayor mentioned earlier, critical positions, you know, but I think we really need to have staff, when we come back for our next study session, is really hone down is what positions are like truly most critical for us to implement with this limited budget that we have. And I think that's something that we need to work on, bring back to us. I think some of those positions, I think all of them are, you know, to me, they're what we need.
Right.
And let's just make sure this point is still, I know I made this point before, and I know everybody likes to use my phrase is, all these years, we've just been basically keeping the lights on. We're never going to do anything progress because we're just financially not there. I just want to make sure that we, here at council, audience, the staff, our staff does, but the public understands that we are still not have recovered from losing RDA as far as the staff, correct? And make sure we all understand that all these years, we're still operating understaffed from that. And on top of that, all these positions that we have increases in wages and insurance, compensation, everything's going up, and we're still not, I mean, to me, it blows my mind how are we even standing, how we're still operating with the way that we've missed so many opportunities to be able to help our city by, you know, shying away from so-called, you know, I don't know, controversial issues, you know, controversial businesses. Well, no, we can't afford that. We can't afford to thumb our nose at things that makes us nervous because we need those funds we owe that to our residents to bring those extra funds in. So just for the next study session about the positions. So that's it. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. District 3, Councilmember Hall.
Yes.
I just want to
on
remind
the-
you that we have about 20 minutes left.
I won't take them all.
But we need to make decision. I'd like to have some time, some break before the next session, so
Yes.
go ahead.
Okay, I would just take a few minutes. To kind of continue on that note that Councilmember Manzo mentioned about to bring in the next extra funds, for us to move forward and to be improving in our services and increasing our revenue and not be stuck with the status quo. Well, there are some very, very vitally important positions that need to be filled in order to achieve those goals. So could you like pop that back up on the screen, please? Okay. I understand the city clerk, and as I'm aware, that there are 100 of, public record PRAs, and that's overwhelming for staff, and I just happen to know it just from talking to the previous city clerk. And so I think that when I'm talking about like vitally important, I just think it takes so much of our city clerk's time and her assistant, so the record coordinator, from my point of view, is important. And so could you, and I can't speak for police, so I'll let the chief but what I'm thinking is that I'm going to just think of I'm going to just pick the ones I think, positions that I think are really, really important, vitally important. When I say vitally important, it's like our arterial, it's like our main arteries. And if without these positions, I think we wouldn't be very, we would be kind of stuck in the mud and wouldn't be able to get out of the status quo. And then our services would not be good as we want it to be. And that was one of our goals that we set as a city council, as a council. We wanted to improve our services, correct? So could I have the next slide, 19? Okay, so the next one, please. Okay, so for me, community development. I mean, we really, really need a community service manager. And that was to replace Alexa. Is that the position?
No,
Or is that
so-
community development?
No, the community development for
Development.
so for
Yeah.
Alexa, she was the director, that's still vacant right now. Adolfo wears that hat.
Well, truthfully, I think when I say that to run this city company, in a most efficient manner, we understand that we try to save and we have to have people wear so many hats. But I really disagree with having Adolfo, the poor Adolfo, not that you're doing a bad job, but we can only do so much. And I know that that's a huge job for one person alone, let alone this is one of your many hats that you wear. So the community development director position is very important. And I just think that that is if we want to move the city forward, that to me is a very important position to fill.
So, yes, so it is on the books. It's still on the
Great.
books. It's not meant to be.
I don't see that here.
Well, because it still exists,
already
it's just vacant, because that's also a position we went out 2 to 3 times,
Yeah.
just like economic development manager 3 times, and did not get, it's one of the lowest
So you already
paid.
budgeted for that?
It's already budgeted.
That's why
It
you're
is
not
in our- it is-
asking? That's why
yeah,
it's not on
That's
here?
not why,
Got it.
yes, yes.
Okay.
It's not a
So-
supplemental.
Yes.
So then, the planning technician, well, I know that you are overwhelmed, the planners, plan checkers, or planning department, we're really overwhelmed with ADUs. I get, is that my fault? I don't know.
No,
you
no,
know?
no, no. So,
No, I'm just
so,
thinking,
no.
I know I had
So
ADU
80
seminars years ago, but oh my gosh, I'm not doing those anymore.
No,
But-
so I think, was it the city of Garden Grove has the highest number of ADUs in
Yeah.
the state? And they, yeah, so,
That's
no,
because
so
they
it's-
have
it's
more
not-
land,
It's not
more-
us, so, no.
more-
So what's happened with community development over time, and this has happened to a lot of the positions, which is why these supplementals, some of them are really just fixing issues that were created in reclassifying, reclassification of certain positions, right? So, so a lot of between layoffs, reclassifications, and just vacancies, we've spent a lot of money in community development on consulting contracts, and I know you've seen those over the years.
Yes, yes.
Okay, so we're missing a lot of levels within community development that you would see in a traditional city, planning tech being, more of the, the lower level as opposed to, a journey level like our associates and our assistants. So we actually lost a
Agreed.
consultant that was doing this planning tech role. So you remember Josephine? Maybe? Nice lady.
Is
up front.
that just one planning technician?
That was one planning
You
technician.
only have one, and now she's gone, so you have no one.
Well, so now our current staff is wearing the many hats trying to
okay.
fill in. So you have higher level planners that are now doing,
Yeah.
Front counter
Yeah.
work. So
Well,
there's that. Same with the senior planner. We have one
Mm-hmm.
senior planner, but what we've discovered based on this, based on, myself and Adolfo in the last year of really diving into these departments,
I understand.
we have current planning and advanced planning, and there's a mishmash of projects that the planners are having to take. So their focus, aside from their day-to-day load, they're doing, like you've got one doing, permits, and then doing, just basic planning while they're also working on the housing element, or they're working on rezoning of like the entire city, or, bigger projects. So
Yeah.
they're really need, so to streamline it, you should have current, you should have advanced.
Say
But
no
again,
more.
Ideal,
Yeah,
right?
I get it. Yeah, I do agree, because I believe that for the community to grow and develop, and more housing, and as that has been one of our main problems, and one of our main goals is to provide more affordable housing, et cetera, et cetera. And so the demand right now is that we need a senior planner. Yes, we do. And because I think that, just food for thought, and I just know that it's just much better for us to hire and train in-house than to contract out, because contracting out is very expensive, and that person really isn't not fully at our disposal, and et cetera, and you know the reasons. And a planning technician, yes, someone lower level to help and to be like the assistant. So to me, because I'm very aware with that department, and I'm just think that I'm sure there are other positions that you think are just vital to the city, and to run it efficiently, and to get more bang for your buck, get better services, and et cetera. I think if we could come back and just
Yes.
have you, our staff, just kind of think over, like,
Yes.
finalize your wish list, because you can't have everything, as you know. And I know that there's revenue that are coming in, but we can't count on that money. So I just want to say, well, excuse me, I'm expressing
I
my thoughts, so
understand.
please. And so I just want to say that we've got income that are coming in, but we can't count on. So what I say is very important. It's okay, so
I
please.
understand, Councilmember Ho.
Please, I know you want to
Please.
eat, I know you want to I want to take breaks
Please.
and all that, but I need to have
Please, can I
my thoughts.
Can I ask to come in? We have only 10 minutes, and we have to take a break, and you know that we go second round, and the two of us are not being able to ask
Well, you
questions.
can't cut me
I
off.
understand the question that you have is very important. There's no question
What
about
I
it.
have to say
But
is
right
very
now,
important.
The time is of the essence, and I believe that, with the
I don't think you should
discussion that
cut me
we have-
off like that.
With the discussion that we have here, I move to have another budget study
Yes,
session
I
so
do,
that we
I
can
do.
that.
I was just going to suggest that, so I'm
So I move
coming
ma-
to a conclusion, is that if I could ask staff to bring back, just finalize the list of
I
our
did have that
needs.
question already,
And
so
then,
you want to second it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
So you don't need to make,
Okay.
we don't need to make a motion. Our staff will reach out to all of you to schedule in the next,
Yeah.
Week or so another study session.
Thank you
Thank
very
Not a
much.
problem.
All right, so
problem.
at this point here, I would like to adjourn the study session, and we'll come back at 6 o'clock for regular meeting.